All right, let's take a look at some news articles. This is pretty amazing. CLI, this is a biological computer using real neurons, they say. So this is it. It comes in a box. It's got some biological stuff in here. It claims it's got living neurons there that will stay alive for 6 months, and you can program them. So the neurons are alive for 6 months. I don't know where they got the neurons. I'm guessing a frog or something. And so you can do brain function through biological computing that captures neural adaptability. So that is a real science fiction thing, you know. You keep Hitler's brain alive inside a jar and all that jazz. I was actually going to do my postdoc on this. I wanted to freeze squid neurons and measure the way the signals went down them, but Harvard didn't go for that, so I went to UC Berkeley instead and did computer models of the brain. But anyway, I never did any computing with real biological neurons in vitro like this. I did study human brain function by measuring how humans performed at tasks. But anyway, this is pretty crazy, and it's interesting as a research project. I highly doubt it has any immediate value. But however, one thing about the current AI things is they're getting really big, and the data centers are getting so big and expensive that they're actually creating a lot of pollution and draining a lot of water, and they're having to build more power plants just to power all those AI data centers. So one solution would be to go to biological neurons, which do a lot of computing with much, much less power. As you know, your brain doesn't have to have a cooling system and all that jazz. The human brain seems to do an awful lot of computing with very low power. So this might be one wave of the future, actually using biological neurons to do the calculation. But they're going to need a lot more of them. I just learned a couple things yesterday while watching one of my advanced students do Cyber Skyline, who's done stuff, and I found some sites I didn't know. This one's kind of fun. What does this code do? You can just paste in any kind of code and it will explain it for you. Now, large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini can do this, but this is some kind of custom thing which does it hopefully a little bit better. So this is really quite useful, especially for my courses in reverse engineering and exploit development, where you get some malware and you turn it into assembly code, and then it's hard to read the assembly code. You can put in assembly code and it will try to explain to you how it goes here. And this is another amazing thing. One of the powerful tools is GDRA, to reverse compiled code and turn it into somewhat readable C code. But this will do it online for you, which is awesome. You can just upload a file and it will then turn it into assembly code with various engines. So they've got some examples. I was amazed by this site because GDRA is a little bit hard to install and use, but this way you don't have to do it. So they have an example. So I go to some CTF challenge. It just reverse engineers it and gives you the assembly code here, right there, so you can read it. And then I think if you wanted to understand it, like here's something that prints the flag, and so here's the, here's a print flag function. So if I wanted to understand this function, I should be able to copy it into, why is it not letting me copy? I'll try using a keyboard. I should be able to put it in here and get some description of what it does. There we go. I don't know exactly how useful it's going to be, but still, I bet it's pretty useful. So I think, it's not necessary for the courses you're taking, but for reverse engineering and malware analysis, this is very useful. And right now I'm using much more difficult tools, and I don't have this what does it do tool. So I'm very happy to learn about those things. I'm going to have to write projects up for my malware analysis class using those new tools. And so there's now guidance on advanced cryptography. What is the site again? All right, let me bring them back. There's 2 of these sites. I'll put them in the Twitch chat. That's what does this code do? And this is Decompiler Explorer. Dogbolt. Yeah, those are pretty awesome, useful sites for malware analysis. And what does this code do might be useful for any kind of coding challenge, I suppose. Anyway, So there's a whole bunch of advanced cryptography. I've added this stuff to my cryptography class a few times, but the stuff I've used has been in like early versions. They really aren't that good. See, there's normal cryptography that we use for HTTPS connections on the internet and stuff, and that stuff is pretty well established. But there are some interesting new things like homomorphic cryptography. Here we go, homomorphic encryption and zero knowledge proofs. And what this is you can encrypt data and then you can use the data without decrypting it. This is very complicated. The current implementations are very slow and very complicated, but the point is you should be able to have something like your medical record in an online system like Kaiser. And the way it is now, if you want to prove anything, like I want to prove I've taken a certain vaccine, the only thing you can do is let somebody have the right password to access your whole medical record. So it's all or nothing. And that is not an optimal situation. It would be better if you could somehow authorize someone to just see one fact in your medical record, but nothing else. And that's what homomorphic encryption can do. You can have encrypted data, and then you can have a query called a ZK, the zero knowledge query, which can be sent up to the server and run and find out just one fact without decrypting all the data. It's pretty cool. That's called homomorphic encryption and zero knowledge proofs. It's very complicated in its current form, and I've got a few projects where people do it. But now the National Cybersecurity Center from the UK has given a white paper trying to define these things. These things are very new. The current prototypes don't really work very well. And so they're writing down how to do this and recommendations about what libraries to use and such. So I'm glad to see them making some progress towards formalizing this stuff, because it will be valuable once it's all efficient and fast enough. But as of at least 2 or 3 years ago when I wrote projects, it was in a pretty rudimentary state. So it's good if a government agency gets involved in finding clear standards to guide us forward. This is amazing. About 10 years ago, I found an IPv6 exploit, which had been developed by others, but they didn't apply it as well. I found a new way to do it, and I could kill Windows completely with it. And Microsoft tried ignoring me when I told them about it, and so I had to spend about a year going to conferences and demonstrating it and humiliating them until they'd fix it. And I think this might be my next crusade here, because this is unbelievable. As you probably know, if you get a Windows 11 machine, Microsoft will really strongly try to force you to use a cloud account to log in, like at hotmail.com or at outlook.com. In fact, it's very difficult to make an old-fashioned local account. So you log in on the cloud. Now that has obvious benefits, like at Apple. You have Microsoft's OneDrive like the iCloud, so hopefully your data is not trapped on that device. So if you lose that device, you can get your data back and all that, which is fine. But if you enable remote desktop protocol on your Windows 11 machine, which means you can remotely control it from another machine, that works fine, and this is what a lot of people have used for decades to control Microsoft machines at a distance. But what's bizarre now is if you now go and change your password to the cloud account at outlook.com, it will not change the password for that machine's remote desktop protocol. You can still connect and control the machine with your old password. And Microsoft amazingly says this is intentional behavior and they have no intention of changing it. But that's insane. I mean, if your password gets compromised, you change your password. If somebody hacks you, you'll get an email saying change your password. This is very common that people change your password. No, I think this is true probably for all versions of Windows. I only tested on Windows 11, but I think now the point is it only works if you're logging in with a cloud account. Let me be more careful. I don't think you can log in with a cloud account on any earlier version of Windows, like Windows 10 or Windows 8. And I don't know if you can use a cloud account on any of the server versions yet. So now that I think about it, it's probably Windows 11 only. The problem is those cloud accounts. But what's bizarre is Microsoft somehow is keeping a local copy of the password and using that instead of going to the cloud. And I don't think they can ignore this. They're going to try to ignore it, but I think I'll keep humiliating them and other people will until they are forced to. And what's bizarre is there ought to be some way. See, what it means is there's a local copy of your password on that machine, probably in a hashed form, but there ought to be some way to erase that local copy. And there are a couple of Microsoft things to clear cache credentials, but they don't work for this. So I think they either need to fix this in general, or at least they need to give you some kind of tool you can run to clean the cached passwords out. I need to use a cloud account to log into Windows. Yes, if you get Windows 11, it will actually force you during installation to log in with a cloud account. It's very difficult to avoid that. You have to use a special key press to open a command prompt and execute special commands or alter the registry or something, and Microsoft keeps blocking those. They really want everybody to log in with a cloud account on their Windows 11 machines. And this is the new feature, and they don't seem to have really thought through the implications. But I don't know why, when you log in, it wouldn't check with the cloud to make sure your password is correct. And so I think they're going to have to add some way to turn this off and say, no, always check with the cloud. I understand their idea. The home users who change their cloud password don't want to get locked out of their machine because they forgot their password. So that makes some sense. But I think, especially for company machines, there has to be some way to turn this off. This is extremely insecure. So anyway, it's I read about it, and then I wrote a project. It works, and I assigned it to some other classes. So it's a real thing that happens, and I think Microsoft, when properly humiliated, will have to knock this off. They often do this. They have some stupid idea, and they'll try to pretend it's okay until they are humiliated in public settings. They didn't fix the IPv6 thing until I actually demonstrated it live on stage at DEF CON with like 2,000 people watching. That humiliated them, and then they fixed it. So we'll see how far this has to go before they get motivated to fix it. It's very much like political activism, vulnerability disclosure. You're telling people something they don't want to hear, and you have to rub their nose in it more and more and slap them in the face with it until they just can't ignore you anymore. Anyway.